Joining us now on the line, D.C. Councilmember Muriel Bowser. She wants to be the next mayor of the District of Columbia. Councilmember Bowser, thank you for joining us here on Mornings on the Mall.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, Brian and Larry.
Okay, look, so I was reading here this morning that you can now officially apply for your concealed carry permit in the District of Columbia. But then I found out, as I read into it a little deeper, because I want to apply, and I hope you'll send me a letter supporting my application. It basically, you have an unworkable system here. You have an application process that requires you to take an 18-hour course, and there is no one in the District of Columbia who is now currently qualified to teach said course. It still seems a rather unworkable system, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stand up to constitutional scrutiny. Why did you do it this way?
No, we absolutely want to have a workable system, and we've looked around other states and know that training courses are available and can be replicated right here in the District of Columbia, and that will be our goal. Obviously, we want to be compliant with the court's ruling, and we'll do exactly that.
All right, but if I have a concern that I have to travel in a high-crime area, which seems to me to be a pretty good reason why one would want to carry a concealed weapon, that's not good enough.
What, to have training?
No. Don't misunderstand me. Please don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying is you have to give a reason why you need the concealed carry permit. And one of the reasons that you might want to give is I have to travel through a high crime area. And there are some here in the District of Columbia that, according to what I have been told, would not be a good enough reason to get a concealed carry permit.
Well, gratefully, we have driven our crime numbers down all across the District of Columbia in recent years, but we will be, this council and our government will be compliant with the court's ruling. We've been very careful in a very short time period to craft a law that we believe will be compliant. Now, there are many of us still who want to preserve the district's rights in the courts, to make sure that our council, our legislator, has the ability to respond to our Constitution, but also protect our city streets and regulate the handgun possession in a way that's reasonable for the District of Columbia. I just spent all morning, for example, looking at people trying to get into the White House or other federal facilities. And we have a very special circumstance in D.C. with the number of delegations that we have that travel our streets, and certainly our nation's assets.
Muriel Bowser, let's pull on that thread about the security here in Washington, D.C. a little bit more from a different angle, though. We saw, again, yesterday, another fence jumper there at the White House. You could very well be mayor of this city when the Secret Service proposes pushing back the boundaries of the White House, pushing back screening to up to K Street, perhaps, and beyond Metro Center, which would severely affect the businesses in those areas. What will your position be as mayor in dealing with the federal government trying to do those things?
Well, we will push back hard against that. We will work with our delegate to push back hard against that, and I would certainly work with the White House to push back hard against that. I grew up in D.C. at a time when we had almost open access to all of our monuments in federal buildings, and the security perimeters around our buildings now make it very difficult for people to be able to reach their government, make it very difficult for us to have an easy flow east to west and north to south in our city. And we know gridlock is bad for tourism, is bad for business, and is bad for the people that live here in the District of Columbia. And it's not necessarily even making us safer. So we know that the Secret Service and Homeland Security and the federal government have an obligation to keep us safe, but they have to, just shutting down the city is not the way to do it.
All right, listen, on the topic of marijuana, it seems very clear, given some of the polls that have been taken, that the voters in the District of Columbia are going to say they want to see legalized marijuana. If you were to become the mayor, you would have to implement that. Here's a question for you. I have so many questions about this. First of all, do you think it's a good idea to have legal marijuana in the District of Columbia? But second of all, some people, let's say bus drivers in the District of Columbia, would they be allowed to smoke marijuana the night before they work? Would that be okay with you?
Well, we
it's
don't
legal.
want any. we don't want anybody to be impaired while they're on a job, especially moving heavy equipment or protecting us out in the public. And so I've been a supporter of decriminalizing marijuana because of the disproportionate impact that it's had on some communities. And now we know in a decriminalization regime, we also have to have a legal way to purchase it. Otherwise, we're just further supporting the underground sale of marijuana. And so we'll see what the voters say, but I tend to agree with you. I'll be voting to approve Initiative 71, and I think that it will pass on November the 4th. But we do have to have a very tight regulatory scheme. We don't want to go head first into having too many facilities or too widespread. There are lessons that can be learned from around the country that other jurisdictions have done it, and I think that we can introduce a very tight regime. But more than that, we have to make sure that anything that we do to legalize marijuana includes the education component. I'll only support legalization for consenting adults for private use of marijuana, and I think that we can regulate it in a similar to how we regulate alcohol sales.
Let me ask you the question a different way here, just with regard to an employer's rights to choose who works for them. A lot of employers here in Washington, D.C. have drug tests right now. You know that. As mayor, will you have a drug test for anyone who works in a Muriel Bowser administration? And will you hire people if they come in positive for marijuana use?
Well, our chief of police, for example, has already said that because that marijuana, the length of time that marijuana could stay in the system, that police officers in the District of Columbia could not use marijuana and work on the job. And I think there are going to be classes of employees, and I want to spend some time looking into it, that would also fit into that category. And it will be an employer's right to say how and what types of tests can be used on the job.
But, okay, listen, we know that traces of marijuana can stay in your system for up to 30 days. Obviously, you're not going to, and the police department doesn't want anyone on the job who's under the influence. But why can't a police officer, in their downtime, when they're not on the job, in their free time, utilize a legal substance? I mean, you let them have a beer, right?
They can't be impaired on the job.
Right.
And we can't have any impairment for marijuana or alcohol.
But if they use marijuana,
there will have to be a standard set and a test that can measure that standard.
So you do envision letting somebody work either in the Bowser administration or in the police force if they use marijuana in their free time?
There has to be a standard set. What we can say is we can have to be able to test for something, and it has to be able to test against the standard. So these are the types of questions that have to be worked out if and when marijuana is legalized in the District of Columbia.
All right. Listen, we have a couple more questions. Can you hang with us for a minute?
Absolutely.
Our guest is D.C. Councilmember Muriel Bowser, who wants to be the next mayor of the District of Columbia. Voting is underway. Early voting already started. Look, David Catania, he's been running these ads, and I know you don't like them. Here's a little sample of the ad.
You know, in all of my years of being a political machine, there's one thing that helps me find solace in all of the hectic noise of Washington. It's so easy being green.
Is that
Spending
supposed to be
cash, the color
Ms. Bowser?
Yeah, so
It doesn't sound like her.
You know, and this is a puppet, we should say, and you have taken great offense, Muriel Bowser, to the puppets.
Well, absolutely. I think that, listen, David Catania and Carol Schwartz have certainly have their right to be elected as Republicans and, support the Republican Party. And Democrats have their right to be Democrats and support the Democratic Party. And I don't think I have never attacked Republicans or attacked their decision to be Republicans. And not just me, have been offended, but the Democrats across the District of Columbia have been offended by the notion that they're puppets. And I just think there's really no place in our political discourse for that kind of for that kind of attack. But I don't think that the voters, more importantly, are responding to that kind of negativity. They see our positive vision, that we've been out here for 19 months talking about what's really necessary to move our city forward. And I think that's what they're going to respond to on Election Day.
Can I follow up on one issue that came up in the last debate? The Washington Post had a profile of voters, and there was one voter who said that she wouldn't vote for Catania because he's gay, and you were given the chance to sort of reject that. And a lot of people thought that, in fact, I won't do that journalist trick. I personally thought that your response wasn't forceful enough. I mean, you said, geez, I'd give her all the other reasons why not to vote for David Catania. I would think, Muriel Bowser, that if someone said, I'm not going to vote for Muriel Bowser because she's a woman, that David Catania would say, well, if that's why they're voting for her, I don't want that vote. I mean, do you want someone's vote if they're voting for you just because Catania's gay?
I think people are voting for me because I have the best vision for the District of Columbia. And I heard your commentary about that debate, and I want you to be clear about what I said. What I said was, as mayor of the District of Columbia, my job will be to change that voter's view, to let her know in the district that people of every background and belief have fair access to our government, to our institutions, and to marriage, and that I would use our office to change views. I think it would be crazy to say to people, as mayor of the District of Columbia, you're not going to be the mayor for everybody. And so I'm very clear in my view.
Wouldn't it be wrong for David Catania to welcome a vote from someone who is voting for him because you're black?
Well, I think that people are going to vote for a lot of reasons, and if you think that people don't use race and gender as a reason to cast a vote, you would be fooling yourself. Well, and it's the job of the mayor of the District of Columbia to represent everybody and to represent the positive views of the city that include equality and marriage equality, and not basing people, not judging people based on their sexual orientation, race, or gender.
All right, I hear you. I'm just still hearing you sort of. I want to ask you one last time. Are you willing to take the vote of somebody and accept their support if the only reason they're voting for you is because they don't want to vote for a gay man?
Let me be very clear. There are people that vote for all kinds of reasons, and so I'm not going to reject any person in the District of Columbia, and I'm going to make sure that I use my office to help change their views.
You have been clear, and it's always so good to have you, and it's good to know that you're still listening to the show.
Yeah, she listens to the show. She's not just a candidate, she's a listener.
Thank you, Muriel Bowser.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much.
Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.